Hello, and welcome to the Music Teacher Coffee Talk podcast. I'm Tanya.
And I'm Carrie. We are both elementary music teachers who love to talk shop, preferably over a steaming cup of coffee. This is episode number 144. Today we are continuing our Recipes for Success series and discussing intermediate lesson segments. We'll also talk about our highs and lows from the teaching week, discuss some ideas in our Know Better, Do Better segment, share a work smarter, not harder teacher tip.
And in our Coda section, we'll give some specific recommendations of our favorite things we are enjoying in and out of the music room. So grab your beverage of choice and let's get started. It's time for our highs and lows from the teaching week. Carrie, how has it been going? Do you have a high or a low to share?
Well, I'm gonna discuss a high, but it's not necessarily teaching related. Last weekend, I got to go to Chicago as part of the fall board meeting for OAK, the Organization of American Kodai Educators, in which I am currently serving as a member at large. So, it's one time that we get together other than the spring conference, and we got to go to the Palmer House, which is where the spring conference will be. So, just being with Oak people, like, when people ask us, like, why join Oak? What are the benefits of it? Generally, other than, discounted membership or discounted workshops and registration to conferences, the thing that I hear most often and what we say is like, it's the people, it's the community that we build, the people that we took levels with, or the people that we've just met throughout the many years of being a part of the organization. And it just feels like summer camp reunion, every time you see those people, because it's people who not only get you as music teachers, which that in itself is rare, but people who get you as Kodai inspired music teachers, which, just brings a new set of challenges, but also beautiful moments, right? So, anyways, it was just great to be with those people. Awesome to see the Palmer House and where our conference is going to be. I'm just so incredibly excited about, the building itself is really cool and old and historical. The conference space is beautiful, and yeah, just and then Chicago. I mean, hello, it's amazing. Got to walk around Chicago with my dear friend Rebecca and Ginger, and just experience some Chicago in the fall. It was quite rainy, but we did get like one clear night to walk around and see some things. And I grew up not too far from there, so I got to be kind of the hostess and be like, here's where I remember going when I was a little girl, to this place. But then, of course, so many things have changed. But, anyways, I'm just really excited about Oak in Chicago, and we'll link the conference information because registration is open now, correct? So
Yeah.
we'll link all that information in our show notes.
Yes,
Please,
it's a
if you've
big one.
ever considered coming to an Oak conference, this is the year to do it. It's our 50th anniversary. It's in Chicago. It's just going to be a really big, exciting conference. So definitely jump on the opportunity if you have it.
I know. I was jealous seeing your texts and Rebecca's texts about what you guys were doing.
I know
And
we missed you. We wanted to smuggle you in our suitcase.
yeah, I wish I could have gone.
Yeah.
I'm not on the board presently, but it's going to be an awesome conference and I can't wait. And it backs up to our spring break. So I'm bringing my family out after the conference and we're going to do Chicago proper because I spent a couple of summers living in Chicago doing summer stock musical theater with kids thing. And so I know some places that I want to take my kids now that they're older
Yeah.
to show them. Yeah.
All right,
Uh,
Tanya. How about you? High, low, in between.
you know, could always go both.
Of
I
course.
was thinking about a low, but then I thought, you know what? I'm going to focus on something that happened that was really nice in second grade. So I see my classes for a whole week, Monday through Friday, the same groups of classes, and then the following week I see a different group. So kids go away from me for 2 weeks and then come back. And you always worry about retention and what are they remembering and will they remember anything? And anyway, I was a little frustrated the last time I saw this particular second grade group because we were working on 2 beat meter. I had presented 2 beat meter and we were doing things to reinforce 2 beat meter. And then I had them do a seesaw assignment, which I think I need to like change up a little bit, where I have them like highlight measure one, circle all the bar lines, all this good stuff. And in looking at it, and also while they were doing it, there was a lot of what's a you know, questions. What's a bar line? I'm like, oh my goodness, did we not? So, if you have those moments where you're like, I was in the
Just talked
room.
about this.
We just, in fact, we did the assignment as a group, or we did part of the assignment as a group. Like I put it on the Mimeo board. I had kids come up and do the things, and then I'm like, and now on your seesaw, on your Chromebook, you're going to do exactly this, but it's with a different song, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Uh, so I was a little bit like, gosh, I think I need to reteach that. So it was day one of this group that I was frustrated that I don't think they got it. And they come in and we're learning some new songs. And I said, we're gonna put instruments to this and you're gonna play, on the D and the A, and then you're gonna click. You're gonna go boom, click, boom, click. Um, and one of my little students, little second grade girls, she goes, like the strong beat and the weak beat. And I'm like,
Hallelujah.
because this this was day one of that week. And I was like, well, somebody got something.
Right.
Somebody knows what I'm driving at. Anyway, so it was just a little tiny reminder that you need to really focus on not just the group as a whole, but like there are individual kids who might be getting it,
Yeah.
and there are kids who, you've got to differentiate, of course. Um, yeah. So
Cool.
yay. She got a star for the
Yeah.
day, gold
Gold
star.
star for her.
Uh-huh. Anyway, so like I said, it's just don't get frustrated when you think it's everybody. It's not necessarily everybody who's not getting it, and yeah, that kind of thing. So it was nice to know. I taught something to somebody one time. Cool.
Yay. Success.
Hopefully more than that, but
Yeah.
so
All right. I think we're gonna mention a bonus high. If you're
uh,
listening to this, we are attempting delving into the world of video recording our podcast and posting it on YouTube. So, if you are just an audio listener, but you've ever thought, I'd like to see what they're talking about, pop on over to YouTube. We'll link to it in all of our, show notes and socials and things, how to see us. But this is our first attempt at it, so we'll see how it goes. But
thank you
we
for your
hear
patience.
we hear and see that there's many of you who are visual, who just really like to see us talking rather than just hear us talking. So here we are. If you're watching, hi. And if you're listening, feel free to switch over. If you want to keep listening just audio, I mean, that's fine too. We'll keep just publishing this as a podcast. That's how it's always going to be. But we're just going to try the video thing and see if people like it. So,
And this is where we say smash that subscribe button, right?
see, I don't know. I don't know all this lingo.
Yeah,
Follow,
well, I mean,
like,
subscribe,
subscribe.
follow, like, do the things.
I don't know. Whatever. Here we are.
Yeah,
We're trying.
we'll put it up there. We'll see what happens.
Yep. So now it is time for our main theme, and we have a little series going. We're calling it Recipes for Success, and specifically around lesson planning. And we've come at this from many different ways in the past, but what we're thinking about this time is, comparing it to a cake, if I may, Tanya, where we talk about our lesson segments being like the layers of your cake, the actual cake part of your cake. That's the foundation of your lesson. When you lesson plan, that's where you should start. That's where I start. And then later, you can add in those beautiful transitions, and that's that delicious little in between the ganache and the Bavarian cream and all that yummy stuff that really makes the lesson even that much better. But we've said it before, and we'll say it a million times, that can't be the foundation of your lesson if you're spending more time planning those transitions than you are the actual foundational lesson segments. That's backwards thinking, in my opinion. I believe in yours too, Tanya. So, anyways, that's why we're starting with these lesson segments. And last week or last podcast, we focused on primary lesson segments, and now we're going to talk about what does it look like in intermediate grades because it's a little different. And there's no hard and fast rules, but just some general guidelines. In our next episode, we will talk about transitions because they are important and make your lessons
Yes.
super fun
Oh,
and
yes.
seamless and beautiful. And then in another episode, we'll talk about what is the icing on the cake and the decorations and the things that just tie it all together. So, with that said, lesson segments. What do you want to say?
Yes. So if you listen to our last episode, we go into more detail about exactly what is a lesson segment, but it really is just a chunk of your lesson where you're focusing on one specific thing, be it rhythm, melody, form, whatever that is. And so your lesson is made up of several lesson segments. And we've said it before and we'll say it again that the lesson segment time period usually is going to last the same amount of minutes as the age of the children in the room. So now that we're talking about intermediate grades, which is third, fourth, and fifth grade, it's okay to push towards having lesson segments that go a little bit deeper, that are like 10 minutes in chunks if we're talking about fifth grade. As we've said again before, they will let you know. The students will let you know when they are no longer engaged and they are over it. They give you very clear signals. They don't say, hello, I'm over this. Well, sometimes they do, and that's a different problem for another podcast. But they will they will let you know in their body language, in their behavior, that they are no longer engaged. So that's what I'm aiming for in my lesson segments, is to keep it about the same minutes as the age of the child. What else can I say about lesson segments? So these are specific activities. It might be using the same material. So maybe you play a game with younger or older kids, and then you go, all right, now that we've played X game, um, then now I'm interested in the part where we sing so high saw me, and that's a primary example. Oh, can you find a place where you hear so high saw me? I'm going to sing the song. Raise a hand when you hear, this whatever. So that could be a whole other lesson segment where you delve in deeper with the material. And then maybe you leave that song and you go to another song or another something else. Another example of a lesson segment could be where you're getting out instruments, you're playing them with this thing, you put them away. That was your lesson segment,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, and we
So,
talked about like doing the game, to use the loose term of the game or the activity that goes with the song. That's a lesson segment. It's a relaxation moment, where you're not necessarily like honing in that moment on the thing, but that is considered a lesson segment as well.
yep, exactly. Yeah. And we talked about the time period, how long it should last. And I mean, I love teaching the older grades because you can really dig in and get a little deeper
Yeah.
and focus them on more, you know, more things.
Yep.
Um, the one that I'm going to talk about, I not only focus on rhythm, but then we make a brief mention of form, and we even talk about little melodic fragments into the listening that we're doing. But
Yeah.
I'm getting ahead of myself.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing. I just want to also mention, we mentioned this resource last year, but a really great resource that kind of explains lesson segments is Lesson Planning in a Kodai Setting, a guide for music teachers by Rita Klinger.
Oh, yes.
I was just looking for it, like,
I
do
know.
I
I'm
have it
looking around
sitting
for
right here?
mine too.
But
I
we'll link
tucked it
to it in the
away.
show notes. It's a publication through Oak. You can also get it on the West Music website. It's a blue book, but
It's a
it's
blue
just a
book.
really fantastic book that just really is a guide for lesson planning, and that's what it is. But she talks specifically about lesson segments, and then there's a whole beautiful section about transitions, which we'll talk about next time as well. But, anyways, just a really great resource if you want to learn more about what we're talking about.
Exactly. All right. So, Carrie, you're going to give it an example.
Okay, cool. So, I'm thinking about third grade, and in third grade, because we were quote unquote behind. I hate that, but just saying it. I actually just presented Ray this last week, because we hadn't gotten to it at the end of second grade. So, real kind of like quick and with maybe different song literature than I would normally use. With second graders, I kind of more third graded it up, and really isolating that mi re do pattern in a lot of songs like Tidy O and Great Big House Filled with Pumpkin Pie, and other things that I'm going to pull back later in the year for other things. One of the songs really great for now, and we are releasing this episode at the very end of October. So if you're still looking for some Halloween or fall related songs, I use the song Pumpkin Pumpkin. So it's pumpkin, pumpkin, round and fat, turn into a jack-o'-lantern just like that. There's that obvious mi, re, do. Um, the cool thing about Pumpkin Pumpkin then is it's also a great song for Ticka Ticka. So this is a double duty song for me right now. I'm using it for Ray. I'm also using it for Ticka Ticka as I'm preparing Ticka Ticka. And then the other thing I want to mention is that you can keep going with Pumpkin Pumpkin through November because we changed the words to turn into a pumpkin pie just like that. So yes, I know
Oh,
you've
ooh.
got a little, slur situation on there, but you can keep the song going throughout November. Like we used the pumpkin for a jack-o'-lantern, now it's November and even December. We eat pumpkin pies in December. So
Do
this song,
you take that I'm sorry, can I ask?
yeah.
You take that ticka ticka, and when you go, "Pumpkin pie," do you show the little
Ideally,
slurs?
I will present Ticka Ticka. No. Okay, let me back
Okay,
up.
just I'm
No,
just
not
wondering because
necessarily.
that would
No,
be you
no,
could
no,
go.
no. Ideally, I will get the Ticka Ticka presented with the original words because it's not ideal to present a rhythmic concept with a slurred rhythm. Obviously,
No,
that's
of course,
confusing
yeah.
to the kids.
But I mean later on, do you
I never have. I suppose you
Okay.
could. I never
You
have.
could.
At this point, we're just like playing the game just for fun. Do you know what I mean? Or
Yes.
we might be adding a B section to it using ticka ticka rhythms and all that kind of stuff. But okay, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Back
Okay.
to how I used it this last week. So I just presented Ray, and so now we are reading the song on the staff. I mean, that's like the very first step, and we isolate that mi re do. We look for the mi re do pattern within the whole thing. Typically in second grade, when I present Ray, I'm going to just choose song literature that's just me, Ray Doe. Like Hot Cross Buns is a great example, Closet Key. But again, because they're third graders and I have to kind of move things along at a quicker pace, I gave them a whole pentatonic song. They handled it just fine. They found that mi re do, and off we went, and we did the little circle game, which is similar to doggy dog. No, not doggy doggy. Bow wow wow, where you're facing a partner. You do a little pat, clap, pat, clap, clap with your partner. And then on turn into a jack-o'-lantern, you literally trade spots with your partner, turn into a jack-o'-lantern. And then on just like that, on the that, they turn and they're looking at their new partner for the next round. And I would say this is your opportunity to make a funny jack-o'-lantern face or a scary jack-o'-lantern face or whatever.
Yeah, I
And
have
I
a
will,
I did that earlier when you were singing it
yeah,
because I
I
just
know
can't
you
help
did.
myself. I'm sorry.
No, and I will say, I mean, this song borderlines a song for third grade. Yeah, yeah, they like it. It does kind of have a little bit of a more primary feel to it. So you could totally do this in younger grades. And I have done this in younger grades, just for the fun of it. But it's so great in third grade for the Ticka Ticka. So I'm always like every year, like, are third graders going to like this song? And they do. They really, really do. And it's, if they've already know the game for Bow Wow Wow, then it's just really easy to teach them the game and it's just a fun little activity. But then what I did in this lesson after we played the game as I got those brand new tone bar sets. So they're like each kid gets their own little set. They're green in a green case. I can't remember the company that makes them now.
Oh,
I'm
I know what you're
sure
talking about. Yeah.
yeah, they're in a green case. And okay, so they're then we were singing in C do. I should have prefaced that because I knew we were going to be going to the tone bars. We did pumpkin pumpkin in C do. A little low, I understand, but for third grade it's out doable. And because we were going to the tone bars, I wanted it to be in the same key. So I know I didn't just sing it in C do, but that's what I would have done in my lesson. Each kid gets their own little set of tone bars, and we open up the case and we identify that, okay, if this big red C is our do today, which one is our re, the D, which one is our mi, the E? Well, oh, here, what about this skip between me and so? Do we need this green F? No. So they take that out and they put it up in like the lid section of the tone bar set. So we established our tone set. They each have their own tone set of do, re, mi, sol, la, and si, do. And then this was pretty groovy, I must say. I found that when I have this tiny little dot cam that I got from my librarian, and it plugs into my computer which then through my computer displays to my Mimeo board. So I was standing at my desk with my dot cam looking down at my tone bar set, and I actually set the dot cam in the case so I could
Oh,
slide the whole tone bar set around on my desk as needed, and the dot cam was like still over it perfectly. Do you know what I mean? So like
yeah.
I had it all set up at the beginning of the day. I don't see third grade till my third period of the day, but I had it all set up and ready to go, like up on my desk. And then when it was time to play, I just slid it to me. Anyways, that's a really geeky, slick thing that I discovered. But all that to say, then I was like, okay, let's just echo some patterns. So I would play a pattern, they'd play it back. I'd play a pattern, they'd play it back. And then the final pattern that I played was do, 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 re, mi, so. Okay, this is getting into transitions, I know. But this was then my next lesson segment was they identified that we were playing the pattern of button you must wander. So then what we did was we sang button you must wander every time we had that do 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 re mi so pattern. They played it on the tone bars, and then we just sang
Mm.
wander wander do 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 re mi so everywhere, right? The reason why I wanted to bring up both of these lesson segments, even though I'm getting ahead of myself with the transition, is I wanted to speak to your point of like, they'll let you know when it's time to move on. Because here's what I did that I shouldn't have done. I pushed it too far. Because then I was like, okay, cool. We have our button you must wander pattern. Now I want you to improvise something for wander, wander. That's not the original melody. And everywhere. It's not the original melody, but you can play anything you want. They hung with me for that for a little bit. And then here's where I really got greedy. I was like, oh, let's all go run and individually improvise that.
I know. I still wanna do that every time, and then
I
I'm
know.
like,
Because it's always like when we
"Oh."
get out the instruments and we get the tone set ready, it's like, ooh, but we could do this. Ooh, but we could do this because we already have them out. So, this is my cautionary tale that even though I know the guidelines of how many minutes a lesson segment should be, in the moment, even though it wasn't in my original lesson plan, in the moment, I was like, oh, but let's go ahead and improvise because that's something I'm always also wanting to do more of is getting my kids to do more creation and improvisation. I just should have saved it for another lesson. We could get the tone bars back out and we could do it all again in another lesson.
What
But
a
I got
great problem to have. You have too much stuff, right? You just yeah,
I
exactly. You
know
can
this
have
is the
another
problem, but
lesson.
not enough
Yeah,
time. And this is
yeah.
where I get worried that I'm like, oh, in my own head, I'm like, oh, we should improvise. And then I was like, no, Carrie, we should save that for another lesson. And then in my own head, I was like, but you know, you're not going to because you're going to be moving on to something else. So, all that to say, I pushed it too long. They got a little antsy, they got a little squirrely. It wasn't chaos. I mean, they hung with me, it was fine. But I knew in my bones as an educator, like, they lost their focus. They weren't into it anymore. They were getting bored with it. We needed to put away the tone bars, and then we played button you must wander for some relaxation
Exactly.
time
Yeah.
after that. So those are examples of a couple of different of lesson segments. We read something on the staff and isolated the mi re do pattern. We played a game that goes with the song. We did some exploration on tone bars. And this is where intermediate versus primary, not to say that I wouldn't do all those same things in a primary lesson, but I would definitely chunk it up a lot more than what I did with third graders. I was able to do a little bit more in the moment, but then I took it too far. So,
Well, you know what? This is what we learn when we teach real kids
oh,
in
yeah.
the room. Like, I can make beautiful lesson plans on paper. I can talk them through. I can feel awesome about them. And then everything's different when you
Mm-hmm.
are teaching to real kids. So, a little reminder, Carrie and I, we're in the trenches with you. We're
We're doing
teaching
this
real
every day.
children.
Yeah.
We are learning, even though we have many years of experience between the two of us and even individually, we're always learning. We're always learning because kids are changing and their attention spans are changing and what they focus on is changing and how they learn is changing. Like all of those things play into it
Yeah.
more than your beautiful lesson plan,
Yeah.
right? Because it's not going to go anywhere if they're just like, you know,
Right.
totally distracted. Yeah.
Where I went wrong, I didn't have any of that in my lesson plan because when I wrote my plan, I knew that I shouldn't go there. But in the moment, I went there, and that's
Well,
where
you were being organic,
I
right?
was
You're just
trying.
it was a teachable moment for less moments than you anticipated.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's all.
let me just also say before you share yours, because I excited to hear yours. Like, we all plan differently. And Tanya, we've talked a lot about this off mic, so I don't know if we want to go there, but like, I am a writer downer. Like, I type my lesson plans. Now, granted, it's on one page. If I can't see it on one page, it's not happening. And it's like song with bullet points of what I'm doing, including the transition to the next song, bullet points of what I'm doing, and like 3 or 4 bullet points per activity, right? So, like, I type it up and I print it out and then I put it in a binder and I refer to it when I'm teaching that lesson as needed. I generally know what I'm teaching, but let's be honest, we get in the moment, especially the first time you teach that lesson, and I was like, oh, what was I doing next? But it's sitting right there on my desk, and I just take a quick peek while the kids are doing an activity, while they're playing Button You Must Wonder. I can just peek and see what are they doing next, right? That works for me. Other teachers, I totally understand that might not be your system. And then after the lesson, I write down what I actually did. I draw little arrows to how I changed things in the moment because I often will be like, oh no, we need to move now, right? So this movement activity I had later, I'm going to move it here. All that to say, I do write things down because then I try to teach the same thing to the next class close as possible. Because you never want to be in that moment where you get to class C and you do a totally different lesson and then
No.
that totally messes you up for the future.
Yeah.
So I just want to say that that's how I plan. So my lesson segments are written down. I know the chunks of my lessons and generally how
Yes.
I'm going to get from one thing to the next. Um, Other folks just do it in their head, and that's lovely.
Well, okay.
I can't.
So I can't do it in my head because the lesson that I'm going to teach this coming Monday, I'm going to teach that same lesson like 2 weeks from now. So I can't
Exactly.
remember. Like, of
Yeah.
course, I write things down. I write down and lesson segments. I write down what's happening for this lesson segment, this lesson segment. I put a little asterisk if it's new material.
Hmm.
So I don't need to write, I mean, I don't write a specific procedure for teaching a song or game if I've taught it before.
Yes.
So, and it's not to say that I teach everything exactly the same way. So if I'm like, oh, now we're going to play Hoppled Squirrel, we're learning the song for the first time, if I was planning on us learning this song by rote through the game and the kids are showing me, I don't know, something else, like, oh, maybe I could get them to sing it on solfege. Maybe we can learn it, the melodic contour first, then I might go there. So I do have like everything, the lesson segments written out. I will write out a procedure if it's something totally different than I've done before, or I'll write more details if I want to say that we are specifically reading melodic patterns with this song. And I usually have it on my slides. I also do a slide deck that keeps me on track
Yeah.
so that I don't print out my stuff. I don't like going back to my laptop or even an iPad because I've tried that as well and checking, oh, what comes next. Like, I have it on my slides and I
Yeah.
use my remote control all the time, and I click to the next thing and I'm like, oh yes, this is where we blend. And my transitions, um I do think through those transitions, and if it's a transition that I haven't done before or it's with different material, I might write out more details, and the writing is me rehearsing it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So, that's a big part of it. So, if it's like brand new song, brand new transition, brand new way to pick this song or game or rhythm or whatever apart, then yeah, I need to mentally rehearse it. When I teach Kodai level 1, I do have students uh, script out lesson segments because in doing that, you're forcing yourself to think, okay, exactly how is this going to work? Like, what am I going to say? And what you say is extremely important to avoid conclusion and to drive them towards the musical learning that you want them to get out of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do believe in writing out things. When I was a younger, less experienced teacher, I wrote out a lot more. I had to because I just was like, yeah, because I didn't have the experience, and now
Exactly.
I do. And if someone says, "Hey, play Button You Must Wander," introduce this song to a group of kids who have never heard it, do it this way, and I can do it. I
Right.
mean, I can teach it in 3 different ways. It's like pushing a button in my brain. There's the button you must wonder,
The button
you know.
button. Is that what you're saying?
The button. Who's got the button? Uh,
All right. Sorry, that
you
was
know,
just a tangent. But, people have asked that question before. Like, do you actually write out your lesson plans? I'm like, yeah, in like a shorthand form. But
yeah,
I do need something more than like, the traditional plan books that they used to give us, Tanya, back in the day, where it was like you had like a week spread and like one
yes,
tiny little box for each lesson.
yes,
Like, that's not enough. I still need
no,
more than a tiny little box.
yes,
There's no way I can just fit, no. So,
right.
all that to say, we all have our own way of doing
I
it.
need to get better at doing what you said you do after the lesson and going, ooh, and we went here. Let me make sure I notate that because I do have moments where I have a class in the room and I'll say,
Did we
um,
do this?
fourth graders, did we read this coda section together?
Yeah.
Like,
Or
and
I'll say,
they, yeah,
"Hey, is this familiar?" And it's like for them, but for me, like I'm like,
that's a great idea. When you see
"Is this
blank faces,
familiar
you
to
go,
you? Or
maybe I
have you
taught
heard
it, but they
this
didn't learn it.
before?"
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Tanya, what is your example of a fabulous lesson segment or more than one?
Okay, well, I was gonna go somewhere else. I tend to pull this listening example out during this time of year. It's Fossils from Camille Saint-Saëns, and let's see if I can do this. Oh, because we're on video. Oh, hey, I gotta be able to share my screen. I want to make sure I give credit where credit is due. So this lesson I got from Brent Galt at an Oak conference many years ago. Brent has wonderful listening lessons. He has a book full of listening lessons that I'm not remembering the title of, but we can link it. Anyway, so this format is directly from him. So here's my fossils slideshow. And it's got this beautiful T ticker rhythm in it. So the A section with ticka ticka ta, ticka ticka ta, ticka ticka tee, ticka tee tee ta is played on the xylophone and then it's echoed by the piano in the next line. And so on day one, I'm not going to have us listen to the entire thing necessarily, but sometimes I will go there if the kids seem like they are ready to go there. So on day one, my lesson segment might be um, let's listen to I'm going to play some music for you and I want you to think about what instruments do you hear? And I won't even show them this necessarily,
Yeah.
right? So we listen to just I don't know what is it the first 30 seconds of the piece
Mm-hmm.
and the A section and they're usually able to say that they hear piano, they will say xylophone and we'll talk about like xylophone marimba a tiny bit and then I'll put this up and we'll listen to it again and I say, "Well, this time I want you to pick out the piano or the marimba and I want to see if you can read what you're hearing." And I will just track and I will point with my little baton, not on the entire rhythm. I won't make my baton go ticka ticka ta, but I will beat wise, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Track it for them. Then we'll talk about okay, what do you see that's the same between line 1, 2, 3, or 4? Maybe I won't say it like that. See, another reason to script your lessons. What do you notice about lines 1 and 2? They're the same. Cool.
Nothing.
What do you notice about line? And then usually from that point, a few kids will go, wait a minute, they're all the
All the
same.
same. Yeah.
They're all the same. So then we'll practice speaking it and not at the tempo of fossils.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll just practice saying ticka ticka ta, ticka ticka ta, ticka ticka tee ta. Right. Then we'll say, okay, well, here's the challenge. Let's see if we can speak the rhythm as we are hearing it at the same time. And then we'll do that. That could be lesson segment for the day. And then we put it away and we go on and do something else. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I'll use that last measure of ticka tee ta towards a transition, but we're not going to go there right now
Yeah.
because we're going to talk about transitions next week.
Yeah.
So that might be a lesson segment for that day. All right. Day two, um, I will pull out fossils again and we'll hear it again. I really think it's important that we hear the piece before I'm asking them to do anything with it.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's super important for listening lessons, for dances. I'm a music teacher. I value movement. I value, reading rhythms without music accompaniment, of course. But if I'm tying this directly to fossils, we need to hear fossils and just hear it. And it
Yeah,
doesn't have to be longer than, like, gosh, even 15 seconds, right?
right.
So, day two, we hear this again, maybe not the whole thing, probably just the A section. And then we see, oh, now it's day two, and we've had some time for that to sink in, and maybe we can do it up to tempo this time, because usually the first time we read along while we're listening is a hot mess
Yeah.
because they can't keep up. It's
Yeah, it's
fast.
fast, yeah.
It's fast. And so day two, we try it again. Hot mess or not, we try it again. And usually they're a little bit better. And then we bring in the oh, is it gonna happen? Oh, it's just a little slow on the computer. I don't know why. Uh the B section,
Ah,
where we show the beat on our body. We're not moving around the room. This is non-locomotor. So
mhm.
I'll say, okay, well, here's how I'm showing the beat. For those of you listening, I'm just sparkling my hands in the air. You find a way to show the beat as long as you're not hitting yourself. I always say that. Do you have kids who want to bash themselves in the head to show the beat?
Yeah, I mean, I try to clarify that early on with, like,
I,
you may tap your head, but not
This
hit
is
your
what I
head.
said.
There's a
Yes, of course.
difference,
So,
yeah.
same thing. So now during we hear new music, keep the beat somewhere on your body, can't make sound, and you can't hit yourself.
Yeah.
So we have kids who are, you know, dabbing to the beat, doing all these kinds of things to the beat. But when you hear A come back, be ready to speak ticka ticka ta, ticka
Mhm.
ticka ta, ticka ticka tee, ticka tee tee ta, right? And they do. So now this lesson segment is mostly about showing non locomotor. I might stop there. That might be my lesson segment for the next day. That might be it.
Mhm.
Um, if they are really receptive, I might go back and go, let's listen to B again, because Camille Saint-Saëns was making a joke. What are fossils? We talk about fossils or indentations, like in stone, things that were from a long time ago. And Camille Saint-Saëns was making a joke about things that are super old. He was even talking about music. So see if you can recognize a couple of tunes that he put in the B section. And so we hear again, and in there you hear Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and you also hear Au Clair de la Luna, which they've played on recorder in third grade. So that's a nice little uh, shout. What do we want to say? Shout
Call
back,
back?
call back.
Call
Thank
back.
you. Yeah, call back. And so we just listen to the B section and pick those out. They get very excited about hearing those two tunes. And usually I have one or two kids who are like, oh, and they're doing it in a round, right? The
Oh, yeah.
Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. So we might cut it there. My thing's not advancing, but then that could be my lesson segment for that day. And then the following day, we talk about, oh, now we have even different music. Here's a C section. Now we
Mm,
get to move around the room while showing the beat. And I usually sidestep around the room to show that you don't just have to march.
yeah,
And it's tricky, but you may not make loud sounds as you are showing the beat moving around the room.
right.
And so we practice doing that. But always be ready now to come back to your ticka ticka ta, ticka ticka ta, ticka ticka tee, ticka tee tee ta. During this lesson segment, it's very likely that I'll show this and we'll speak this rhythm, and we'll talk about how does this A section differ from the first A section.
Mm,
uh, which I can't show right now. It's going to catch up in like 30 seconds. My computer is still very old. But anyway, about how it's shorter. And you can see I wrote A variant.
mhm.
Now, is this really technically music theory wise an A variant? I think it's more like an A prime, but we're just going to talk about a variation. This is
A
a
truncated.
a truncated, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. So that would be over for 3 to 5 days. I could be doing this, and ideally on the last day, we're doing the whole thing where we're speaking the rhythm, we're moving around the room. So this is mostly to practice T-Tika, but of course we're also learning or reviewing about form. Um, the instruments that I talked about at the very beginning, where what instruments do you hear? That's just kind of a a jump start to get us into listening to the piece. And so this is an active listening lesson. Again, not mine. It's from Brent Galt. You should buy his book, and we'll put that in the show notes. But this is a little slideshow that I made to go with that little coda to this little part. If you are listening or watching and you would love to write us a review for Music Teacher Coffee Talk, the podcast, I would be happy to send you my slides for this specific T-Tickle lesson. Um, yeah, just go ahead and leave us a review and send us an email, and I'm happy to do so.
So, can we clarify when you say a review, do you mean on like Apple Podcasts or whatever
Yes,
podcast
I'm sorry.
player?
I mean, whatever podcast player you're listening to, right?
Yeah.
We're going to disable comments for the YouTube. We don't need that.
No.
No.
Okay, so they write us a review, take a little, and then just email us. Should they take a screenshot? They don't need to do that. Just
No, just
email
email us.
us at musicteachercoffeetalk@gmail.com. Email us there and just say, hey, I love to review. My screen name is blah, 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 blah. And then
Yeah,
Tanya will in turn send you her PowerPoint of fossils. That's very cool.
happy to do so. Yeah.
Thank
So anyway,
you for
that's
modeling the correct way to chunk out that activity and not do too much, because honestly, and this is something I would have done easy early in my career, I would have done all of that in one lesson, and then that would have taken up an entire lesson.
I have tried that, Carrie,
Yeah.
and I have at the end of the lesson going, wow,
Yep.
that bombed. Why did it bomb? Because when
Yeah.
I did it with Brent Galt, Dr. Galt made it was just so engaging. Sure, you're in a room full of music educators. Of course it's going to go like that,
Right.
right?
Right.
This is why we are doing this specific series,
Yes.
is that it's not they say it's not me, it's not you, it's me. No, it's not. Yes, it's not you, it's me.
Yeah.
It's not the material necessarily. Could be.
Right.
It's you.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
you
and
might need
I've
to.
heard yeah, I've heard so many times from educators when they've reflected, through mentoring and coaching and teaching that I've done of educators, well, I did this activity, didn't go well. Kids just can't pay attention. Kids just can't focus, and you want to blame it on the kids. No, no. When something doesn't go well in my lesson, I immediately blame myself. Are there times where one kid or a couple of kids derail? Of course, that's a whole different podcast. But if the whole class is just starting to snooze on you, it's not them, it's you. And you meaning me and Tanya, it's all of us. And again, I think it just always needs reminding that you can chunk it up and you can do more in the next lesson. It doesn't all have to be in this one isolated lesson. And this is something that it's like when I hear music teachers just be like, can you just give me a great lesson on blah, blah, blah? It's never one great lesson. That's the thing. It's a series of lessons. It's an activity or a unit that spans over many lessons. I never have one lesson that's just going to represent how I teach T-Tika to kids, right? Like there is one lesson that has many different lesson segments, some of them on T-Tika and some of them maybe doing something else. But that to me is what is the hallmark of good, specifically Kodai inspired music teaching, but any inspired music teaching, is you don't just beat one thing to death and then that's just one lesson. It's
Yeah.
activities that span over many
Oh,
lessons.
I've tried that. Don't
Oh
I've been there for sure. I've tried that recipe,
yeah. Yeah.
and that wasn't good, and nobody loved it. But yes, you gotta keep it moving, and read the room, read the room. I say that a
Because
lot.
to go back to the cake analogy, I feel like all you end up with is like this big, thick, dense, right? Like like a fruitcake. You just end up with one big hunk of fruitcake and it's dry and it doesn't have enough variety and flavors. That's my analogy. It's just one big hunk of
I
fruitcake.
like fruitcake, but I need some coffee, and
Okay,
yeah,
exactly. You have to have something else to dunk it
you
into or
have to.
whatever.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, maybe fruitcakes. I hope I didn't offend fruitcake lovers out there. That's not what I mean. You know what I mean, though. Like you
Of
don't
all
get
the
enough
people to offend,
variety.
yeah,
Yeah, it's just
I
one.
understand.
So, all right. Well, next time we'll talk about transitions, which is good because we're having a hard time not talking about it. So,
I almost went there. I had to stop myself. I did.
I know. And I promise I don't teach my or plan my lessons with transitions in mind, but they are important and we'll talk about that in our next episode.
Exactly. Um, okay, two things because I just found my book. One, in my slides, which I need to fix, it should say locomotor one word because that's one word. Also, I found my book. It's Listen Up, Brett Galt, fantastic resource. In addition to fossils, he's got listening lessons from For All You Need Is Love, um, In the Hall of the Mountain King, and even a Beck song, ePro, which is awesome. It's a fantastic entry of the Gladiators. Oh, I have never done that. Anyway, this fantastic resource, Brent Galt, Listen Up. I think you can get it on West Music. I am positive.
We'll link to it wherever you can get it.
And it's time for our Know Better, Do Better segment, Carrie.
So, rather than just like name something very specific, I just want to kind of pose a question, and there's no clear answer to it, which is the hard thing about it. But if it was okay with you, Tanya, I thought we'd have a little mini discussion. This could be a whole podcast
Oh,
about
no. Okay.
about changing words to songs that may have a problematic or questionable history to them.
I
And I
have
bring this up because
thoughts.
I keep hearing it. I keep hearing it. Examples of educators who just say, well, can't you just change the words? Or I've just changed the words to that. And there are times that I have changed the words, and there's times that I say no. So I don't have a hard and fast rule other than like, if the words that you're changing are to mask that the song was written in a way to demean or put down a group of people, I'm not going to just change the words and call it good. If it's specifically changing a racial slur, no, I'm not just going to change the words and call it good because then that perpetuates a song that shouldn't be perpetuated, right?
Yeah.
An example of that is Johnny in the Woodpile. The original word was not Johnny, it was a racial slur. And
Right.
so then at some point, somebody changed that word, and then it was passed on by many music teachers for many years unknowingly until the research presents itself. So all that to say, like that to me is a hard and fast rule. Like there's there's no way. Um
Yes.
Gray area would be like I'll bring up the song Naughty Kitty Cat for example. I still teach Naughty Kitty Cat the way it was taught to me. Well, here, let me back up and say originally I would learn it as Naughty Pussycat. And then I have changed it over the years as many have to Naughty Kitty Cat because it just avoids any issues with that. But then in particular, the second line of you are very fat. You know, there are many educators who don't feel comfortable with that, so they change the words to naughty kitty cat. Why did you do that? So it's
Right.
like, to me, that's softening something that some may find offensive, some may not. And it just kind of like doesn't change the history of the song, doesn't change the meaning of the song, just takes away one problematic thing. So to me, that's a situation that I think is totally fine. Um, I just was wondering, and then I do have a resource to mention, but I was wondering, Tanya, if you have not necessarily rules, but just some guidelines that you use for yourself that's different than what I just said.
Well, same as the kids say, samesies. Yes, I agree. If it's a song that was written with a racial slur or any kind of slur in the title, that is harmful, then I'm not going to do the song at all. So I'll bring up another example, John Kanaka, which is not, it depends. It depends on the people that hear that word Kanaka. Some people take use it as a slur. It has been used as a slur. Others use it as like I'm proud to be called this thing. And so since it has been used as a slur with specific populations, I'm not going to do it at all.
Right.
So that's one. I have changed the words to Naughty Kitty Cat, and I do have them sing, "Why did you do that?" In fact, it's funny because very recently I couldn't remember if I changed it with a specific group. And so I just started them singing it and I
Yeah.
listened and I went, oh,
Oh,
okay,
yeah,
they're
I did
singing,
too.
"Why did you do that?"
Right.
So for that, yes, if it's taking out a word like pussy that might be problematic, but that's just because of our times, but
Mhm.
it wasn't written,
Exactly.
I know a pussy willow, she that one I don't do at all
Yeah.
because the focus is on I know a little pussy, she is so I can't remember. It's a song about a pussy willow.
Mhm.
And that's the whole point,
The
is
point.
that the idea once upon a time was that are you singing about a cat? But these days people won't take it to be singing about a cat. So anyway, I'm going to stop saying that word over and over so people can stop cringing. Sorry about that. Anyway, um so I agree that Johnny on the Woodpile is a great example, and yeah,
5 little
I
monkeys jumping on the bed, another
exactly, all of
example.
that.
Yeah.
If things were eeny, meeny, miny, mo, like that, there was a word in there in the like core first verse of the song, the chant. If it's there, then I'm just not doing it at all. Right
Right.
now, here's another thing to be aware of. Do we call them extrapolated verses? So there are songs that are folk songs that were sung, and then many, many verses were created
Yeah.
um, in addition to like the one, two, or three core verses that people know, right?
Right.
I'm thinking about the Old Chisholm Trail, which is probably a bad example because you don't have to dig too far with Old Chisholm Trail to
No.
find like really problematic things.
What
Um,
about, like, "Bought Me a Cat"?
yeah,
Because the last verse talks about instead of animals, now it's talking about wife, and
yes,
it's kind of degrading to women, right? So, like, I
right,
know there's a really fantastic arrangement of that by Copeland, right? Aaron Copeland.
sure.
And I've heard choirs who have just taken out that last verse and not sung that last verse, but they've done the rest of the song with the little animal motions and the little things. I don't know how Copeland would feel about that, but I personally am okay with that because
I'm okay with that too. Yeah.
the rest of the song is fine.
What about when I first came to this land? It's the
Same.
same
Yeah,
idea at
same.
the very end, right?
Right.
So I bought myself a wife, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah, so I could see if it's it depends. It just always
I
depends.
know, and
And I
this is
have
the
changed
problem.
my mind on certain songs.
Yeah, me
I
too.
just yeah, I just know if I'm doing a song and I feel like a little bit scratchy about like, ooh, I hope kids don't. All right. If I ever find myself thinking, I hope kids don't Google this because I don't want them to find this, then I don't do it.
Yeah, find something new. There's so much
Like
music out there.
Ippo Tai Tai.
Yeah, no,
Um,
no.
I'm like,
We did
there's
a whole segment
other,
about that before. Yeah.
yeah, there's other T songs that I could find. And here we keep bringing up all these problematic songs. Let's bring in some songs that we could do
Instead.
instead of that.
Okay, so
Right.
then that brings me to the resource that I want to mention, and you called this to my
Yay.
attention, but then I saw it referenced somewhere else recently. So I will be honest, I haven't dug into this a lot. So, I haven't like necessarily, I can't like vouch for it. In fact, that like I use this song instead of this song, and like I haven't used it to fidelity, but it's there and I want to mention it. It is called the Know Better, Do Better Project, and the website is literally knowbetterdobetterproject.com, and we'll link to it. And it really is just that. It's here, not let's focus on all of the songs we shouldn't do, but here are, which is important. I'm not saying that's not important. You have to do your research. But once you've made the decision of, I'm not going to do this song, what could I do instead that has a similar game or has a similar rhythmic or melodic content or a similar thematic whatever, like, so anytime somebody says, oh, but the kids just love that one, and that's their excuse for keep doing the song, here are 20 other songs. Now, this is where I struggle because a lot of these songs are newly composed songs. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's just not my level of expertise because as a Kodai inspired teacher who got my Kodai training my third year of teaching using tried and true historical folk music rather than newly composed song is always been my jam and where I go, right? So, I mean, I kind of almost have a knee jerk reaction to newly composed songs because it's like, oh, those aren't authentic folk songs. We shouldn't be using those in our classroom, right? I'm trying to get rid of that stigma in my brain. There are plenty of beautiful songs out there, and I think it's all about balance, right? So, a lot of the resources and the songs that they include on this website, and they give you a list of all the people who have contributed songs and who they are. They are newly composed songs that I don't, maybe weren't necessarily written in essence to replace these songs, but could replace specific songs or just new songs to add to your repertoire.
Yeah, and
So,
I've listened to a lot of those on that site, and they're lovely. Like a lot of those songs are just really, really great songs.
yeah, yeah,
The one in place of Amazing Grace, I thought was really well done.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
So all that to say, we'll link to it in the show notes. It's a great resource just for this exact reason. And then just to bring it back to the original question of pose, just please be oh so mindful. If your immediate reaction is I'll just change the words and it's okay, really think about then in 100 years if somebody's singing the version that you changed the words to, but they don't know the historical context of the song, is that okay? Is really what it comes down to. So um, there's so much music out there, and there's so much more music we can create ourselves and with our students, that the reason why we hang on to these songs sometimes is just, to me, ridiculous. But all that to say, here's a resource and a question to think about, and we'll go from there. So now it's time to work smarter, not harder, and Tanya's going to share a tool with us today. I'm scared. Go ahead, Tanya.
okay, Carrie, do you want to be scared or do you want to step into the present?
I'll try. Go ahead. I'll
Okay.
listen.
All right. Well, so, okay. Chat GPT is a tool. It's a tool.
Yeah.
Carrie. It's just a tool. So I have used GPT recently for a few little things, and it's a really good tool. And I keep saying tool because I want to be clear that I am not having Chat GPT do all of my things
It's not writing your
because
lesson plans for you?
it's not. It's not. And here's the funny thing, a few weeks ago, somebody put on a Facebook group. Why do I keep reading these music and Facebook group posts? I don't know. Anyway, something about like, oh, here's a lesson I had Chat GPT write. Oh, everybody should look out. I looked at the lesson. It was, I mean, it was okay, but yeah, it was boring. It
It
was a
was
little
dry.
dry. It was very dry. And I
It was
thought, well,
dry as if a computer wrote it. Is that what you're saying?
well, of course, right? So, like,
Yeah.
if a non music ed person used this lesson, it would be dry. You really need to come to everything with your experience, and your knowledge and your love of the music really plays into your lesson, of course. So I'm not saying write your lesson plans with Chat GPT or even lesson segments. However, I have used it recently. Let's just take one thing, parent emails. All right. I don't know about you. Have you ever spent 30 minutes or 45 minutes or a whole planning period trying to be tactful in an email to describe to a parent how their child is in trouble in music because
Don't go
I don't
there.
know,
Just yeah, keep
I'm
going.
not going to go there because they did something inappropriate,
Yeah, yeah.
right? I mean, not like bringing the principal, get this kid out of here inappropriate, but
Right.
like, something that the parents need to just know about. Or even as simple as, oh, this student won't stop giggling constantly when, they're in the presence of this other student because they're just
Sure.
constantly sharing whatever. Um, and those are hard. So you go to Chat GPT, and I will link it in the show notes, and you just say, you give it a very specific prompt or not even specific, and say, write an email from an elementary music teacher to a parent about their child doing this, that, and the other, and ask the parent for cooperation and addressing this issue, right? And then they come up with this long, very well written, kind of dry um, email or just blurbs, And usually I say, make it shorter. And then it makes it shorter. And you go,
Yeah.
make it nicer. And it makes it nicer. Make it less passive. And it makes it. So when I do this, I do that and I filter it and, make it shorter, all this stuff. And then I take that and I put it into a new document and then I rewrite it like with my voice because
Right.
I'm not going to say, I hope this email finds you well, for example. That's just not, I'm not, if you get that from me, that's not me.
That's
I
the
mean, I
machines.
that's the machines. I want you to be well, but I'm not going to start it
Use
like
that
that.
phrase.
Anyway, yeah. So it's just a jumping off point,
Mhm.
which is important because that's what I spend the most time on. I spend the most time like how just starting. So if you find yourself struggling to write things where it's just starting, it's a good jumping off point.
Okay.
That's all. I also used it to write a blurb about my kindergarten singing games night coming up, right?
Sure.
I'm like, I've used the same blurb over and over again. And I really want it, I want to just jazz it up. So I just put that in there, saw what it came up with, and I'm like, "Ooh, I like this little fragment, but not this so much." And so I'm always rewriting it in my own voice. It's just a jumping off point. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's
I'm
it's
just a
okay,
little
Carrie.
afraid of machines taking over the world, but that's okay. I will I've been wanting to try it for just what you're talking about, like
Yeah,
little things. So,
they might take over the world, so you should always say thank you to your devices.
thank you,
Thank
computer.
thank you AI name. Thank you whatever. Anyway, we can work in symphony with the
Okay.
machines, right? We can
Okay.
do that.
Famous
Yes.
last words.
I
Famous.
mean,
I feel like so many sci-fi movies start with those words. That's all right. I'm fine.
I don't want to be left in the dust,
I get it. I know. I know.
I am older and I don't want to be one of those older teachers who's just like, my way, when I was a kid, we used to do things that way and we're going to do things because it's my way or the high. I don't want to be like that. I want to make
I
sure that I can be relevant and ChatGPT is a helpful tool.
okay. I will check it out.
Okay. And it's time for our CODA section where we talk about something that we are enjoying outside, maybe inside of the classroom. Carrie, what you got?
I was so fortunate to go to see Nickel Creek live in concert this last week. I love Nickel Creek. Loved them for many, many, many years. It's
Did
one
they
of
play
the
the Fox? You never told me.
Oh, yes, they did play. Oh, yeah, they played the Fox. It was their last big song before they came back for their encore. Yeah, the Fox is like everyone's favorite now, which is so fun because us music teachers like geek out about it. And I saw two other music teachers there that night. No,
Oh,
well, three because
oh,
married couple saw our friends Travis and Emily were
oh,
there. And
cool.
then
They did go.
yeah, they did. And then another music teacher in our district. So it's just always fun to see other music teachers. And Emily used to teach elementary music. So we gave each other the eye when the Fox came on, like, yay. But no, what I want to say is Nickel Creek, I mean, this is not new, came out with an album called Celebrants this last spring, I guess it was. And shamefully, I hadn't really like listened to it a lot. But then it was like once I knew I was going to the Nickel Creek show, which was that day. It was kind of an on the whim decision. I was like, I gotta listen, and I've been listening ever since. So it's a really good album. You know, they hadn't released an album in like 8 9 years. I mean, it's been a while,
Well, Chris Steele's
and
been playing with like everybody,
well, yeah,
right?
he had. They all have had side projects, and then he went and did Prairie Home Companion, and then of course there was a pandemic. Like, yeah, they've all been busy, but they're back together. And Celebrants is a really good album, and of course, seeing them live is incredible. But if you don't have the opportunity to do that, at least listen to Celebrants. It's just a really awesome album. I'm enjoying it a lot. Love Nickel Creek.
Yes, very cool.
All right, what about you, Tanya? What are you enjoying?
I'm going to promote a podcast I've been listening to, and it's funny because I've been listening to it, but I hadn't really looked it up. Of course, it also is a video thing that you can do, and it's put out by Kevin Hart and his LOL network, which I didn't realize was a thing. Yeah, Kevin Hart has some podcasts going on, not necessarily hosted by him. So this podcast is called One Song, and it's very similar to a song exploder, but it's got two guys. Um, one of them is like Luxury is his name, and the other one is DJ. Gosh, I can't remember. They take one song, and one of the podcast hosts has managed to get the stems, so that's like the isolated, studio recording parts of just the vocals of, say, Let's Go Crazy by Prince, and like,
Okay.
oh, here's just the drums, and here's just, and they really take apart the song and talk about, like, oh, well, the way the drum sound here is actually an interpolation of the drums from this old Motown recording. It's just like fascinating,
Cool.
very fun, very interesting. And I've been enjoying it. It's two guys, like there's a lot of what do I want to say? Joyous conversation.
Oh,
Like whatever. Just it's it's not for children.
I was
I
gonna
think
say
they drop some
PG-13
language.
or
They don't drop too much language. It's not out there. It's not way in your face F bombs.
yeah,
But it's not always appropriate for kids. But it's just, if you want to geek out, like if there's specific songs that they talk about, I want to hear that. If it's a song that I don't know very well, I'm not listening to that episode
sure.
probably. But
Yeah.
actually I've started listening to just every single one. But they talked about New Order's Blue Monday, which is right up my alley as a dyed in the wool Gen Xer. Um, Prince's Let's Go Crazy, Rehab by Amy Winehouse. These are just, it's just fun. It's a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
So the podcast itself is called
It's
One
called
Song?
One Song,
Okay,
and you
cool.
can find it on all those podcast players and on YouTube.
Okay.
We've reached the double bar line. Thank you for listening to Music Teacher Coffee Talk. Show notes can be found at musicteachercoffeetalkpodcast.com. You can connect with us on Facebook or Instagram. Just look for Music Teacher Coffee Talk.
If you enjoyed the show, please consider subscribing, rating, and leaving us a review on iTunes or whatever podcast player you use to help others find this podcast. And we always appreciate folks buying us a coffee, so look for that link on our show notes and on our Facebook page. Next time, we'll continue our series about recipes for success in lesson planning and talk about transitions. So until next time, this is Carrie.
And this is Tanya wishing you happy musicking.